Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where frontline sales leaders teach you how to build and scale an outbound sales team. Hey everybody, today we're joined by a guest who's one of 2017's top 25 most influential inside sales professionals, and at the same time, a top 50 sales dev leader that you should know. Our guest today is Phill Keene. He's the director of sales at Costello, newly minted. I guess you're 2 months into the job now. Hey, Phill.
Yeah, it's been a heck of a ride. So
Fresh-faced. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Aaron and Collin. This is great to be on.
Yeah, it's great to have you, man. So we've come up with a bit of a plan for today. We're actually going to talk about some tactics that you stole off of Aaron.
I did.
And make your own.
And they don't exist in the world anymore because that video just came off YouTube, Aaron. So
I don't know why, so I'll have to track it down.
It's good.
I might have done it. I might have taken it off and just forgotten. So,
well, maybe we can recreate that magic then, and hopefully other people can take that knowledge.
Just have to listen to this podcast to get the goods.
We're bringing it back.
There you go. Love it.
Great. So today we're going to talk. Phil's going to teach us how he maps an organization using the phone. Pretty standard, Aaron Ross mapping call style with a couple of really unique twists that I think make it super powerful. Now, Phill, you've actually prepared some slides you're going to show. So those of you listening on the podcast, you can always check us out on YouTube. You can check predictablerevenue.com/podcast to find that link, or just search for a Predictable Revenue Podcast on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. You should be able to see my screen here in a second.
And even cooler, I think we discovered not that long ago that you can upload these videos to iTunes now. So there's the video version of the podcast as well.
That's true. That's true.
I love it. Yeah. So you have so many places to find us, so we can share this content and everybody can learn from it, like I learned from Aaron many years ago.
And then there's so much out there you can't find anything because it's too confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get started. Let's jump into it. And so the process is mapping phone calls. And Aaron, I listened to this video a couple years ago, and I've taken some spins and twists off of it, and it really doesn't vary a lot from where you're at. But there's some really key elements that if you do it consistently, I think it's going to help a lot of people win. So I'd love to get into the content and go into the meat of the show.
Yeah. Well, let's just start by telling him the purpose of the call, because I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard about mapping calls. They don't really understand when you say mapping and company on the phone.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So I think really where my purpose for mapping phone calls is calling high and getting into an organization. And a lot of times when you start talking in most deals is you're not high enough in a deal, and you're not reaching the C level. You're not reaching the VP level. You're not reaching the right decision maker to start. And you really don't know where to go. So you need guidance in who's the right person to speak to, as well as the people that they might report to, and how that structure and hierarchy of an organization would work. And additionally, as we start seeing, and really since mapping phone calls have come out, whenever you start talking about it early, there's been a lot of changes in how people buy software, and it's now more people are involved. There's 5 to 6 to 7 players, up to 15 players inside of some deals, where you have to understand how the organization works. And that's really what I feel is a mapping phone call can frame up how an organization works and who to actually speak to. So anything you'd add to that?
I think too, it's also just great training for new people, new prospectors, or anyone who's new in sales, and especially probably primarily if they're new to prospecting, like out of college or few experience. So it's a great training tool.
Yeah,
as well as
absolutely.
Get some activity going.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you early on in a prospector's life is you have to get them on the phone and comfortable being on the phone, and these are typically a way to get into just having conversations and talking about what your organization does with anybody that will listen, and it does help.
Yeah, I love the way that it takes the pressure off, that you can sort of frame it up to the rep as, hey, this is not a sales call. You're not going to get a credit card on the phone. You're not going to ask for a PO number. You're not trying to sell anything. You're just calling up, asking for information.
Yeah. And if you frame it up that way, it definitely works. So really from the first step is calling high in the organization. So when you call high, you're calling for the president's office. You're calling for the CEO. Can I talk to the CEO? Can I talk to the executive assistant? We actually, inside of our data system, we look up who the executive assistant is and call them specifically. And we start with that. We call as high as possible in the organization. just to get to the C level, because they can usually trickle things down. And I think a common misconception with gatekeepers and executive assistants specifically is a lot of people think that they're really there to be what the people call them, which is a gatekeeper. They're not there to be a gatekeeper. They're actually there to be a face of an organization, to be helpful, generally helpful. So, and it's in human nature to, when I ask you a question, that you want to be helpful and help guide me to where I should be in an organization. That's typically what their job is to protect someone's calendar, yes, but at the same time to help you understand where you should be in an organization. So I think if you use that to your advantage, when you call high, that's why I call the executive assistant, because that's what their purpose is in an organization. It's not to just block their calendars. So a key thing after that is I ask for permission. So I still start off and I treat anybody inside of that organization with the same amount of respect I would any other VP level, C level, or whoever that is. And I actually ask for their name. And this is a really critical step. So it's, did I catch you at a bad time? No. Great. What was your name? I didn't catch it. And you might tell me it's Collin. Hey, Collin, it's great to meet you. So now I start to get some familiarity, because I know that when I'm going to remap this organization and I call in at a later date, I need to know your name. And I also use it because it's a mutual sign of respect multiple times throughout that conversation. So we ask for the name, and I also make sure that I have permission, I can have a conversation with them. So that's one thing I definitely think that I try to do. The extra step is take that note and know that person's name. And that's worked for me and many of my team members, is getting into that executive assistant or whoever that is and just knowing. There's a really weird example. The lady's name is Moon, which is a really unique name. But every time I call, it's, hey, Moon, it's Phill from such and such. It's Phill from Costello. It's great to talk to you again. And it over time, it started to resonate really well. And then she knew who I was. So when I picked up the phone and called her, she knew it was me. Yeah. But I was calling in and remapping to get different people in the organization. Who's the person that deals with this problem? Who's the person that deals with this problem? So make sure you slow down and ask for permission, and make sure you have time, that they actually have time to talk. The third step is one of the most critical steps. And this really works for across most people in an organization, or all places in the organization, is stop and ask for help. So rather than go straight into your sales pitch, you really have to slow down and say, hey, Collin, can I get some help? And the general answer from most people is yes.
I couldn't help myself from saying yes there.
It's funny. At one of the first days that I was at Costello having the conversation with the SDRs that I was training, it was like, hold on, watch this. And I turned around, and our director of marketing, I turned around, I was like, hey, Jill, can I get some help? And the first answer she said was yes. And it was validation right away, where it's, people are generally helpful. And I think maybe it's me. I'm a champion for humans. I love humans. I think go humans, that kind of thing. I think most people are generally helpful and good people, right? So they want to be helpful. They want to help you get to where you're doing. And I think at the same time, you have to frame out why you're calling. So it's not just asking for help, but it's letting them know why you want to call them. So you slow down a bit and say, hey, I'm doing a little bit of research, which is what you're doing. I'm trying to figure out who's the right person in your organization that helps with maybe sales training at your organization, because I'm selling sales technology that helps sales trainers. Who helps with that? And you're not forcing them. You're not pitching your product. You're not going deep into that conversation. You're just asking them, hey, I'm looking for the person that helps with sales training. And if they're having trouble struggling with that, maybe give them a little bit. So, hey, I'm actually calling. I want to speak to Aaron Ross. He's the right person to speak to at your organization. Typically, based off of his title, he's the CEO of the company. He's the vice president. He's the sales operations manager. So slowing down a little bit and maybe not making them do that mental gymnastics of who I should actually be handing you off to. Yeah, you slow it down. You should be reaching out to this type of person. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really, really key. So I want to slow down a little bit. I'm stealing all your thunder, Aaron, I feel. So if there's things you want to interject and add, I'd love to hear you from the first 3 steps in the process.
No, so far so good. Although I would say a lot of times when someone picks up the phone, the assistants are great because their job is to pick up the phone. And, or you ask them, hey, did you catch it at a bad time? A lot of times they'll say, yeah, it's a bad time, but what can I do for you? And the other thing is I find is the main problem with this, well, assuming you can get a human, because sometimes you just can't get a human, it's it's tone. So in other words, they get calls like this, and if you sound, whatever the words are, if you just sort of have that sales voice, they will they will hear it immediately and you can hear them trying to get off the phone.
Yeah.
But people who have too much sales experience actually struggle because they have too much of like that sales voice that they've cultivated over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to keep it super conversational and really where I start, this is actually my favorite joke, and it resonates as you start talking through, hey, you've been on the phone, you can't get through this phone system. I actually, if they have a difficult phone system, I always make the joke where it's, hey, you know what? I've been in your phone tree for like 4.5 hours. Thank you for answering your phone. And they always laugh. Like I've always said, and it's like, listen, this is a sales call. I'm going to be completely honest. This is a sales call. Did I catch you at a bad time? No, because most people don't treat them that way. Most people are like, can I get Steve, please? And that's what they go into. And then they hand him this, oh, I meant Steve, such and such. Like it's not, that's a typical thing they run into. You're not breaking a pattern for them. Like this is pattern interruption for most of these gatekeepers. So you have to be able to force yourself through some of that.
Mm-hmm.
So really critical.
SDRs, do you find that they just sort of skip that step and they try and rush through?
Yeah, so I think they don't know what they're asking for. I mean, it goes back to understanding their function in the organization. Is most gatekeepers are there to be helpful and be an assistant. They're not there to really truly cut you off and shut you down. So if you come in, and to Aaron's point, if you're conversational and you're just you and you're that person. When I talked to Moon, the person that I was speaking to all the time, the executive assistant, it was conversational, and we built rapport over many, many weeks of me calling in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, calling for that same guy because she just happened to be the EA for the entire executive suite, and I was still talking to the same person.
Yeah.
And she was always willing to pass me off because she knew I wasn't going to burn her. Like she knew that I wasn't going to make her look poor when I called and made a phone call because I was just being conversational. I was natural. It wasn't a sales call. It wasn't a sales pitch. So I think that was really critical to really build that conversational side of things.
And I think you show that in how you treated Moon.
Absolutely. So step 4 is you wait for them to ask what you do. This is actually what happens with most prospectors or really anybody in sales. As soon as you get a live body on the phone, the first thing you want to do is be the smartest person in the room. And you want to spit out all the knowledge that you have about what you do and how you do it and how fast you are and bigger, faster, stronger than you are than everybody else. And honestly, most people don't care. There's nothing in that for them. So I use the acronym WIFM, which is what's in it for me. But you got to really slow it down and wait for them to ask what you do. So if someone goes into the conversation and they go into, well, hey, so tell me what Costello is. Great question. That's why I'm calling. I'm calling about Costello. Well, what we are is we're actually a technology that helps you prep for phone calls and make sure that you ask the appropriate questions throughout the sales process. Now, if you notice, it was very simple and a very, very elementary level. When you tell somebody on the phone, regardless of what their level is, what you do, it has to be something that's you have to be able to tell your mother. If you can't tell your mother what you do, you're overcomplicating things. You have to slow it down and make it conversational, make it easy language to understand, but you don't tell them what you do until they ask. Because honestly, they don't care. And it's the truth. Like they don't care what you do until they actually ask for it. So you can keep asking questions and going into the conversation, and then finally they might be, all right, so why are you calling? What do you do exactly? And that might help give them some guidance, but you frame out, well, we help with sales calls. Mm-hmm. We help make sure you're prepped, and we make sure that you're asking the right questions. So who helps with training to make sure they're asking the right question for your sales team? There's no mental gymnastics of that. They know there's somebody that actually is on the other end of the training spectrum that says, yeah, this is the person that trains the entire sales team. You should talk to them. So I think that's really, really important. And then going into the types of questions we ask, are we a fit questions? So you really got to ask the questions of, hey, I don't want to waste anyone's time, which is the Aaron used at all time, which I don't want to waste anyone's time. Hey, we work with companies that typically have a inside sales presence that has a sales trainer or an external sales trainer, and they typically hire usually 20 to 30% growth in sales year over year. Are you that type of organization? So you frame up, say, this is what we think inside of an organization. We're this organization. Is that you? And they can immediately tell you most times. These executives, since understand or any gatekeeper really, they see most emails that come in and out of the organization. And most of them, you don't give them credit for as much as they actually know. And they could tell you, yes, that's us. Great. So I now know that what I'm doing, it actually makes sense for my time investment to continue to call in this organization, and they're guiding me to the right person to speak to. So get an internal referral. So looking at the right person, who's the best person to speak to first about this? What blows my mind, if you look at all of the cadence and sequence softwares that are out there in the world, all the emails and calls, you might make 30, 40, 50, 70 calls to an organization at one person. I always stop most SDRs or any prospector, AE, whoever it is that's selling, and I ask the question, you called this person 45 times and they haven't answered. Collin, how do you know it's the right person to speak to?
I don't have a good answer for you, Phill.
Most people don't, right? And I feel like I'm ranting, so stop and feel free to interject as you go. But the internal referral is the absolute most important part of any sales process. If you're trying to get it, if you can get somebody to internally refer you, it's way better than any external referral you can get, and it's way better than relevance. Everybody has this conversation to write these highly customized of emails. I've actually had VPs of sales tell me that the only reason why they took my call is because a colleague said I should take the call. It had nothing to do with what I said. It's because this guy here said that you should do this. And they trust the people that are their peers. So the internal referral a lot of times are going to work a lot better. And you can play this game to where you get an internal referral to somebody, and then you say, hey, based off my conversation with Stephanie said that you're the right person to speak to about sales training. Well, no, that's not me. It's actually this guy. Great. Can I get transferred to him or his assistant? Yes. And then you kind of go through those hoops every time, and you start now understanding and mapping the organization. And every time you get referred to somebody new, you stop and you give them "Are we a fit?" calls. You say, well, hey, you know what? We typically sell at these types of organizations. Tell me, is that you? Does this make sense? And you just collect more data. It's such a, like, doing mapping calls is really just puzzle pieces. It's putting together different pieces to understand it. When I finally reach that decision maker, I now understand how much they spend on training, what type of systems they have, what technology they're using, who reports to who's their number one salesperson. Like, that's the type of data I'm trying to figure out, so I can come to them and say, here's what I know about your organization, and here's some 3 problems that exist that you might not know. If I could bring something new that stops and makes them think, because I've just asked these types of "Are we a fit?" calls and got referrals to the right people, like, it's going to slow them down and make them think a little bit.
It shows that you've done your homework coming into it. You're not just going to show up and throw up. You're not going to just show up and just try and read them a script. You actually are doing research on the organization at this stage, as opposed to just dialing from a phone book or a list or whatever you got.
Yeah. And you can Google search all you want and look at LinkedIn as much as you want. A phone is a tool for research. Just as much as it's a tool for sales, is a tool for research. So I'm going to slow down as we got to step 6. So I stopped at question, or at step 3, but step 6, Aaron, anything that you want to add to the conversation?
No, you're doing great. You're doing this for me, man.
I thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm
humbled.
I'll say too, these are, one thing I see people get confused on is experienced salespeople tend to have a hard time because they're so used to calling and trying to get the decision maker. It takes them a lot of practice. Actually, it takes more practice for them to learn to slow down and try to get to the assistant first. That you want to talk to the assistant. You're not trying to get around them. So between that and the tone, it's actually a lot easier for newer reps to learn this and do really well because they have less bad habits. Or I don't want to say bad habits, but they're they don't give off the same triggers.
Yeah. I mean, they don't know what they don't know. They're in the place where they don't have their pitch is always conversational because that's just how they do things right now. They don't have a methodology that's really set in stone. So you're teaching them a skill set. This is actually, when I implement this from a new hire perspective, I usually do this in week 2 or week 3. So before they actually get on the phone call to do anything else, is they're asking business level conversations just about the organization. And all they know about the organization most times is they've seen our product and what our product can do. And they at least know the elevator pitch of what our product can do or who we are, our solution, or whatever it is you're selling or pitching. So you're doing this early in the process. So it level sets that when I get somebody on the phone, I'm inquisitive. I want to be curious. I want to ask why. So that brings me to step 7, which is keep asking questions. If you have a live person on the phone that's willing to have a conversation with you, when I talk to Moon for hours. As many questions as I could answer. And you as a salesperson have to start feeling out. You can tell when people get frustrated. You can absolutely understand when an organization or when a person gets frustrated with you. You can start listening for keys and triggers. But if they keep answering questions for you, keep asking. Don't stop. Never put down the phone. What sales system do you use? Great. What technology? When did you buy it? How did you implement? Who is involved in that process? Who does that person report to? How does that work? Hey, you said this. I'm curious. Tell me more. Like, just keep working through that process and asking questions and feel out the conversation. You'll start picking up when they're starting to get a little bit frustrated with you.
Yeah, you'll be able to hear it. And again, the more you sound like a lost lamb and someone who's a real person, the more they'll try to help you. The more you sound like a salesperson, they'll just try to shut you down. Nicely, though, usually, not always.
Yeah. And if you're conversational and you're nice, most times they're gonna give that back to you. So moving into the pitch. So I got all this data. I collected all these questions. She answered everything, or he answered everything I needed. I know who I should talk to. I finally reached my decision maker. I get a voicemail. Great. Or I send an email, whatever it looks like. So my mind would go into, hey, Aaron, I spoke with Collin. And what he said is you're the appropriate person to speak to that makes decisions about how you train your sales team. I just want to get a few minutes of your time just to discuss in a brief chat. I'll shoot you an email as well, so you have my contact information. Just make it super simple. Make it easy. Like, show that you did your homework. Hey, I spoke to Collin. That's going to carry weight. And most times in most organizations, if you're listening on this podcast, if I said that my boss told me to call you, or even somebody that's a peer of yours that's in an organization told me to call you, your ears will perk up almost immediately. So, I was referred to that you're the best person to speak to about this. And when you say that and you're wrong, but somebody referred you about that, what the typical response is, hey, I'm actually not the best person to speak to about that. You actually want to speak to, and they give you a new name. So you got to make it simple and don't make them do gymnastics to actually understand what you're saying and how you're saying it or how they got your information. I love the idea, especially as you're having a conversation, just to say, hey, this is a sales call. We've never met. Because they don't need to make them think about who you are and where they know you. Like, this is how I got to you. This is the information I know. And this is why I think it's relevant to have a conversation with us. Yeah. If you're selling, especially to VPs of sales, that will resonate with them. You sell an IT buyer, that will resonate with them. They want direct. How'd you get me? How'd you find me? Yeah. And it's crazy when you try to hide it. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's like in their mind, think about this. When someone calls you and if it's a number you don't recognize, all right, you think about in your mind, you're like, you're already thinking, who is this? Why are they calling? That all those things are spinning until that person answers those questions. You're spinning. Once that person answers those basics, then you can become more present and start to listen and actually talk to them.
Yeah. And I think it's something is you can guide them to what you want. And as soon as you can get them to focus on you, when I frame out, most times I pitch a product. So if I was pitching Costello today, I would say, hey, Aaron, if you think about all the things that happen in a sales call, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts in that sales call. Well, this is where Costello comes in. And I think it's something, if you slow down and I actually tell you, Aaron, hey, Aaron, think about when you're on a sales call, all the things that are happening. I'm asking you to do it. And most people in their mind will trigger them to start thinking about all the things that are happening. Mm-hmm. But don't force them to try to think about where you came from. Just tell them, hey, I was referred by Collin to speak to you, and this is why he thinks that. So don't overcomplicate that process at all.
Yeah, less is more.
Yeah. So here's something that I do a little bit different. That's a variation from you, Aaron. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But I actually call low. So after I call high, I call low. And I go to our end user and I say, hey, sales guy. So you're the end user of our product. What problems exist in your process when you do this, this, and this, and this? And I ask them questions about our product and I start to dig a little bit deeper and I understand problems that exist in the organization that I can now bring to the decision maker. So if I don't reach the decision maker on transfer, I then call low. And I'll call low even if I reach the decision maker, because then I can bring that to my discovery call because I just set the meeting. And say, hey, so I actually learned this about your organization. I know this about you today. Did you know this? So I actually reverse it all the way back down and I call low just to do fact finding and dig a little bit deeper. which is actually really difficult. But I'm selling sales tech to sales guys, so maybe that's why it works for me. Is, hey, I'm a sales guy too. You're a sales guy. Can we have that conversation? Can you help me figure this out? And a lot of times that does resonate because they would love if somebody came and gave them information about trying to sell to us. So I think that's something where it does resonate. But I call low. I reversed it all the way back down to the bottom of the organization. So that's something I've been doing, and it works extremely well for me. If you're selling to marketers, call the end user. If you can sell them on it, everybody's so afraid to call low. If I can call high and I can call low, I can shake the tree hard enough that I find the decision maker that they hear about me from somebody. You just got to keep working the system to go into it.
I think people have sometimes, if they've had a lot of experience, have to let go of the fact of every call is basically trying to get an appointment. Rather than these calls are really about research. It's like you said, the phone can be a tool for research. So you could call the sales line, you could call the support line, you could call and get referrals to, you said, low level market, whatever, if they're marketing or IT, or IT's they pick it up less, but still use it to research a company.
Yeah. And it's just fact finding. And I think people are so afraid to pick the phone up. Like, this is, like you said, a really great way to get people that are early in their sales career to start using the phone well, and starting to get to the place where they feel comfortable on the phone, just having a conversation. I've done data and I figured it out of where I think it has to happen. And I think there's a place that people need to get to, which is it's 3,000 phone calls. And if you get to 3,000 phone calls with roughly a 12% conversion to conversation, maybe 15 if you're really pretty good. So if you're talking that, you're having roughly, call it 350 conversations on the phone. So how fast can you get 350 conversations to feel comfortable having dialogue on the phone? I mean, it's the 10,000 hours theory. The more that you do it, the more comfortable you get. So you have to practice it and do it over and over and over. Do this and practice with your mother. Like, call her on the phone and pitch what you're doing. Ask her questions about how her day's going. Like, just practice doing this. And I think it's massively critical to get comfortable talking on the phone again.
I think that's so key. We had Phill Keene on here, was it 4 or 5 weeks ago? And his episode probably just came out, about a month or two ago, because we're now releasing this in the future. But he was saying the exact same thing. As part of their onboarding on day one, they actually get them to cold call one of their friends, and then they have to cold call their mother.
Yeah. It's crazy, but it works. Like, you just get used to having conversations. I firmly believe that people respond the same way that they respond to other people. So I actually have a cadence. It's called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. So if I talk sequences and cadences, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, what it does is it's the way that you communicate with people that actually respond to you. So if Aaron were to reach out to you today, Collin, he might send you an email. And then what happens, he gives you a few days to respond. If you don't respond, he gets pissed. He's going to send you another email. But he gave you a few days. And then over time, that frequency gets faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And then if it's 3 weeks and you still haven't responded, he's going to start texting and calling you and emailing you, and he's going to do it frequently. He's going to do it 3 times in a day. That's how you respond to people that you're actually going to talk to. So if you flip over that's basically flipping upside down on a regular cadence, because a regular cadence for most people is, I'm going to call you today, Collin, and I'm going to send you an email tomorrow. And I'm going to call you and I'm going to email you, and then I'm never going to talk to you ever again. That's not how you communicate with other people. So if you can keep things conversational and the way things actually should be in conversation, like, it's massively critical. It's helpful for people. So I definitely think it's a just communicate with people how you should communicate with all other people. So, and then I can go more in depth. If anybody has questions about Crazy Ex-Girlfriend cadence, I will share it with you and show you it. Just email me. It's Phill@nbsp.com. I will send it to you, exactly how we map it out. So,
is that end Costello, like the end of Costello, or
AND Costello.com.
There you go.
So it's just communicate with people like they want to be communicated with, like you want to be communicated with. Don't overcomplicate things. And then the last,
Phil, my wife's going to ask if you have a crazy ass boyfriend version for her.
We do. We do. And I'm willing to change. I've had that question asked by multiple women. Why is it got to be a girlfriend? It's like, it's just what happens with me. I'm just telling you how I feel. It's like, but hey, it's crazy ex significant other. We can call it. I don't care. Everybody's crazy. Everybody's got a little crazy in them. But it's that idea of anybody that you communicate with. It's my crazy mom, right? Whatever you want to name it. It's the idea of the way you communicate with people. That's how it works. I send you an email. I give you time to respond. Like, I'm not going to be creepy and over invasive. So last step, Follow up. Do the things you say you're going to do. When you say you're going to send an email, send an email. Make sure you do all the tasks that have to happen. This means putting all of it in Salesforce or whatever your CRM system is. Use that data and put it somewhere. And we actually use a method, and I have an idea around it. It's called the Ohio method, which is OHIO. Ohio, only handle it once. If I find this information out, put it in your CRM or whatever your database is for storing information, handle it one time and never do it again. Only do it to add more data to what you know already. So that's really, really, really critical, is follow up and do it once. Put the data in somewhere that you don't have to do it again. If somebody in the future wants to go back and work the same account, make sure they can understand it and make it simple for them. And a lot of people don't do this step. This is a critical step.
Yeah, I think that's how you end up with processes that break down or crappy data in your CRM system, or things in there twice, and things just messy from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish that most organizations from a day one started with what data should be here and why should it be this way. That way, whenever I want to pull a report 5 years from now when we're crushing it of what our actual ideal customer profile is, I actually have that data and I don't have to go spend tens of thousands of dollars cleaning it out. Because that's what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I had an intern last year at Octave that literally cleaned 30,000 records for us so that we can figure out what our ideal customer profile was. And he didn't get to all of them. Like, that was just a part of it. So I had a segment that I felt was, here's our ideal customer profile. Here's who actually talks to us and wants to interact with us. So you just don't make problems for your future self. Do the work today, because it's way cheaper and it's way faster and way more efficient. So that's the 10 steps. Aaron, anything to add? I pitched the guy that came up with this, so I feel weird actually putting it out there.
Hey man, I'm like, it's great to see people using it the way it's supposed to be used and applying it, and because this stuff works. Everyone gets so entranced with emailing and over emailing, they forget about. I mean, we see, for example, with a lot of our clients and customers, that if they just add calling, and I'm not sure if it matters what type, but if they're just calling in addition to emailing, they can often double their results.
Yeah.
Not just because the techniques work, but I think it also just brings more commitment to what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I greatly appreciate the technique and being able to take this and pitch it back to the predictable revenue audience. It was awesome.
Yeah. That's great. Now you mentioned 3,000 calls, by the way. I'm just touching that. That sounds like a lot, but I will say, if someone's new and coachable to this one technique, because you're right, calling, there's different types of calls, right? There's RWF call, AWF calls and demos, but for mapping calls, a lot of people, again, if they're coachable, they, with 3 or 4 role plays, and then like a few live call, like 3 or 4, 6 live calls, they can get this. So in other words, I could take a new hire, your sales rep or whoever they're hired. It's their first day. They've just filled out their HR forms. Get them on the phones, and they can use this technique without that much practice. Maybe like with 15 minutes or half an hour of warm up, and they can be doing these. Yep,
I agree completely.
Does it help for them to be experts? No. I mean, yes. Does it help for them to be experts in this? Yes. Do they need to be? No.
Yeah. It's actually a really good task for sales interns. So sales interns where you're kind of afraid of what they're going to do and how to get them on the phone. It's a great way for them to go research your target accounts and dig deeper, and then have one of your more expert people start doing some of the additional work where they take it further.
Yeah.
It's an easy process. It's conversation. It's calling someone and saying, hey, I need some help. And this is what I'm looking for. And that's all you're doing. You're calling someone saying, hey, I'm calling you. You know the organization, how this works. Like, can you help me? If you could just use the phrase, can you help me? Put it on a sticky note and put it on your monitor. And anytime that you get kind of in a bind and you don't know what to say, hey, I'm just looking for some help. Can you help me? It's really critical for that process.
Yeah. Thanks, Phill. This has been, thanks for coming on the show. It's been great to hear somebody else's perspective. I think I've sat in with Aaron on coaching clients and heard him sort of, I've actually watched, one of the first times I went on site with Aaron, we were in front of this group of salespeople that had been selling this software for a long time. And they're like, "No, this won't work." And Aaron's like, "Okay, pass me your phone and give me the number of one of these clients that you say it won't work on." And I don't know, in like 2 or 3 calls, he's got like a qualified or like a meeting set up with the right person.
Yeah.
And the sales rep's jaws just dropped.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
I didn't do the mic drop, but I think you should have, you know.
I'll try that next time.
Definitely needs to. I've you know what, I've done the same thing where teaching some of the local tech companies here in Indianapolis that are small before Series A, and I've done it with some of the enterprise companies that we work with. They're afraid to use the phone and get on it. Like, let's just try this. Let's just try this, and this is how I approach it, and it works, and it works really well. And Aaron, I have so much gratitude, and I'm so thankful for the process that you put out there, and I've now used it and made it my own over the last few years. So I appreciate you. Let me take some thunder for this one.
Yeah, my pleasure. Our pleasure. Thanks for sharing it here with the audience.
Yeah. And now you're helping us get the word back out again. So thanks again, Phill.
Yeah.
It's been great having you out today.
Absolutely. You guys have a great one.
Hey, thanks. You too.